Silent Hill F is a psychological survival horror game about expectation, not being in control of your life, and what happens when someone gets pushed too far. This was my first Silent Hill game, and it's a game that stuck with me way after I finished it. I didn't go in completely blind though. I knew that Silent Hill was a series known for psychological horrors and that Silent Hill itself is a town in Maine, but after finishing this game, I got to thinking that maybe Silent Hill isn't just a town, but also a state of mind, being that this game takes place in rural Japan. The game takes place during the 1960s in the fictional town of Ebisugaoka, Japan. The setting does a great job of depicting the era and what life was like. Our main character, Hinako Shimizu, lives in a time where, from a young age, women are expected to behave, marry young, and stay quiet, while letting others make decisions for them. Hinako doesn't fit in because she doesn't want to live by those standards, and she's looked down upon because of it. Her family not understanding her, pushing her to be someone she's not, her so-called friends using her hardship to try and make an advantage for themselves, and her fate pulling her into a situation she doesn't want to be in. All of this just because she wants better for herself and wants to be different from the women around her, boiling up inside her until the stress of it finally overflows in a tragic way. The story of the game isn't told directly to us. Nothing is spelled out, but everything is intentional. From the locations we visit to the monsters themselves. The more you learn, the deeper the mystery gets, leading to even more questions. Finding clues through notes and even subtle things people say led me to building multiple theories. This is a story built on interpretation. It wants you to take what you see and somehow make sense of it all. Taking subjects like trauma, fear, expectation, transformation, and even drug abuse, putting them on full display. The game's about identity, the battle between who you are and who the world tells you to be, getting into your head until you realize the real monster might just be the reflection you've been avoiding. Silent Hill F is a psychological horror game where we take control of Hinako Shimizu, a seemingly normal teenage girl, as we fight our way through a rural town and a mysterious shrine that are both swarming with monsters as she tries to escape the horrors around her. The art direction really hits the creepy vibe it's going for, while showcasing all the different environments that each have their own personality. While exploring these environments, we can find notes scattered all around, read entries in Hinako's journal, see memories of her past, and talk with the people around her to help us figure out the truth of what's going on. The characters are the backbone of the entire story, and the game does a great job of fleshing them out, even down to all the enemies and the reason why they're there. So using melee weapons, the limited resources we can find, and our puzzle solving skills, we have to fight against what Hinako fears most. I can't really explain anything about this game without going into detail on the story, and I want to do it in a more personal way, going through the game in the way that I experienced it. So if you haven't played the game and want to see the story for yourself, go play it now. Come back and tell me what you thought. If you have played it or just want to continue watching, then I would appreciate it if you stay for the full video. That was the spoiler warning for the entire video, because from here on, I'm going straight into story spoilers. So with that out of the way, let's get into Silent Hill F. The game opens with a flashback. We hear a young girl talking to her doll. The girl's upset, telling the doll that the other girls in town won't let her play with them, because this girl likes to play games with the boys, and the other girls don't like that. Her older sister overhears her talking to the doll, and decides that she'll play with her. Fast forward, and we see our protagonist, Hinako Shimizu. Her older sister Junko arrives, and the two of them talk, with Hinako seeming sad or distant, or maybe even both. But her mood changes when she gives her sister a present, a small gold bell symbolizing good fortune for the future. Now in the present, we're in Hinako's home, where we hear her dad in a drunken rage, yelling that Hinako has no respect and should be more like her sister, with her mother trying to defuse the situation. While this is happening, we see a picture of her family together on her sister's wedding day. Hinako gets frustrated about the argument and leaves the house, giving us control of our first steps in the rural town of Ebisugaoka. Making our way to a candy store she and her friends hang out at, we start to notice how empty the town is, almost like we're the only one here. On the way, we hear someone call us a traitor, looking up to see Sakuko, one of Hinako's friends. The conversation seems a little strange, kind of tense, but when Hinako mentions wanting someone to talk to, Sakuko says she'll meet us at the candy store. When we make it to the candy store, we meet Hinako's best friend, Shu. And from this first scene, it's obvious Shu might care for her as more than just a best friend. He gives us a box just as our final friend Rinko arrives, with Sakuko not far behind. Hinako seems happier until a thick fog comes over the town. The others don't notice it, and Sakuko tries to call us a traitor again, but before the words can leave her mouth, red halves appear all over her body and she falls over motionless as the fog rushes after the others. In a panic, we start running while a monster within the fog chases behind us, leaving spider lilies under it as it moves. Splitting up and running into a dead end, we're trapped until we hear the chime of the bell we gave Junko. We never see her, but she calls out to us while dropping a letter to help us escape. After escaping, Hinako falls and hurts herself, so she opens the box Shu gave us back at the candy store. Seeing that it's full of painkillers, we get the tutorial on how healing and healing items work. There are multiple healing items in the game, but these painkillers are some of the best, so we'll be using them to heal ourselves a lot. Now that we're alone, we gotta find our friends. Hinako decides she wants to go back to the candy store and check on Sakuko, since she's the only one who didn't get to run away. On our way there, we get ambushed by monsters that look like disfigured female dolls or mannequins. These are Kashimashi, the most common enemy we'll come across, but with no way to defend ourselves, all we can do is run until we get cornered by one. Not knowing what to do, Hinako tries to back away until she hears Rinko call for help somewhere in the distance. Hearing her out there, Hinako reaches for the strongest metal pipe in the world, and we enter our first combat encounter. Let's pause for a second and talk about the combat. It's melee focused with an emphasis on stamina and weapon durability. There's 3 types of weapons we can find: light, medium, and heavy, that can all perform light and heavy attacks while having their own strengths and weaknesses. Attacking and dodging both consume stamina, and if you use too much, you'll drain it, leaving yourself open to attacks. Dodging at the last second slows the game down, while instantly refilling your stamina, and attacking just as you're about to be hit lets you counter, making it easier to land attacks. Hitting enemies repeatedly or with a heavy attack can stun them, leaving them open for follow-ups. There's also focused attacks that need to be charged. They leave you open, but can do a ton of damage. After each connected swing, your weapon loses durability, and if it hits 0, it'll break, leaving you defenseless while looking for another weapon. Luckily, you can carry 3 weapons at a time, and if you notice your weapon's about to break, you can catch it early and use a repair kit if you have any on you. I think the combat system is pretty easy to understand, but it's definitely easy to mistime a swing or miss a dodge and end up dead. Now that we can defend ourselves, we defeat our first monster and fight our way back to the candy store, where we see the area covered in what I call the floral blight. Here, we find Sakuko, but she's dead. Hinako lays her friend to rest in the store, but when we step back outside, we're ambushed by enemies. Fighting them one by one, we end up defeating them all. But the victory is short-lived when Hinako gets a headache that's so bad, she passes out. Waking up, we find ourselves in an unfamiliar dark room with what appears to be an altar in front of us with a puzzle to be solved. Solving the puzzle reveals a door, and as we go towards it, Hinako gets another headache. Pushing through the door, we're caught by a strange man wearing a fox's mask. He helps us to our feet and makes it clear that he knows Hinako before telling us to follow him. With nowhere else to go, we follow him as he leads us to a locked door. We have to solve another puzzle to get the key, and while looking for clues, we see Hinako's childhood doll before being attacked by a new enemy. This place is called the Dark Shrine, and the combat here is slightly different from in Ebisugaoka. For starters, we do a lot more fighting here. So the good news is, weapons have infinite durability. The bad news is, when an enemy is defeated, it'll only stay down for a few minutes before getting back up and coming after us again. So it's better to just try to avoid them if possible. While avoiding the monster, we solve the puzzle and get the key. Picking it up, our doll appears again with a message saying,
"Don't trust the fox mask."
Monsters appear in the room and we run back to the locked door as they chase us. Avoiding them, we unlock the door, but when we try to shut it behind us, waking up in front of the candy store with our head in Shu's lap, we tell him the news about Sakuko. Not understanding what's going on, we decide to look for Rinko, with Shu suggesting we check her house. He goes ahead of us and we follow behind, while fighting and getting jump scared on our way. We hit a roadblock of the floral blight, so we cut through a nearby farm where we need to find a key to get through its barn. Finding it nearby, we're attacked, causing it to fall down a well, and to get it, we have to fight a mini-boss. This is the Ara Abare, a giant mass of flesh that swings a huge knife around. After dying 100 times, I finally got the key, and we catch back up to Shu, but not for long, after we get separated in a fog-heavy rice field, where we have to find our way out by solving puzzles given to us by enemies known as Ayakakashi, or scarecrows, with each of them suspiciously resembling one of Hinako's friends, or Hinako herself. I just want to say the rice field is when I noticed how good the sound design in this game is. Moving through it, the fog is so thick you can barely see in front of you, and some of the Ayakakashi are hostile, but they only move when you're not looking at them. Hearing them shuffle closer towards you while out in the distance is a great way to make you anxious. The sounds they chose for enemy movement are great because they sound intimidating. The music is also tension building, making it feel like something is about to sneak up on you at any moment. Making it to Rinko's house, she immediately latches on to Shu. Inside, the three of us come up with a plan to leave Ebisugaoka and find help. We can't use the bridge leading out of town because it's broken, even though I think we can still get across the river without too much effort. We decide to escape using the highway, but to get there we have to go through the mountains near Shu's house. So with our plan set, Hinako and Rinko go to get supplies for the trip, but
where Rinko?
back in the dark shrine, we wake up where we left off, and out in the distance, we see Foxmask walking through a door. Looking for a way to him, we find our doll again.
Don't believe the fox's words. Stay away from the western room.
So obviously, we went straight there. In the room, we find a key to open a secret path. Making it to the door we saw Foxmask go through, it's locked. Of course. So, we have to find another key. But when we start to look for it, we hear someone. We find the key, and just like last time, we rush back to the door while monsters try to stop us. On the other side of the door, we arrive at a bridge where we see a monster that looks and sounds like Sakuko, leading to our first boss battle. After defeating her, she continues to attack, but Foxmask appears to save us by banishing her. Afterwards, he takes us to a fountain where we need to cleanse ourselves before we're allowed to go deeper into the shrine. After watching him do the cleansing ritual, it's our turn, but as Hinako drinks the water, it turns to lava in her mouth. At the bottom of Rinko's stairs, Shu rushes to check on us while Rinko angrily mocks us. Missing the sleeve to her shirt, Hinako shrugs it off, saying we should start moving. And as we leave the house, Rinko pushes past us hella aggressively, saying she wants to be behind Shu because that's where it's the safest. Hinako thinks back, knowing Rinko pushed her, but she doesn't say anything about it. With the two of them going on ahead of us, we walk and fight through town, meeting them at a roadblock of floral blight and monsters. Seeing no way through, we decide to take a detour through our old middle school. Shu and Rinko go on ahead, and we catch up to them near the school, and overhear Rinko telling Shu to give up on Hinako. Ignoring that, we finally make it to a gate leading to the mountains, but it's locked. So instead of climbing the chain link fence that's the same height as Hinako, we have to look for a key in the best place to be in any horror scenario, the school. As soon as we get inside, Rinko complains that she needs a break, and of course she wants Shu to stay with her, so we have to find the keys on our own. The school is really creepy, and honestly one of the best areas in the game because of its vibe. While looking for the keys, we come across a bulletin mentioning the banning of a game the kids play called The Fox's Sacrifice. Making it into Hinako's old classroom, we're locked inside until we solve a puzzle regarding the time Rinko and Shu skip school together. This took me way longer than I want to admit, but after solving the puzzle, Junko appears and we talk to her, but we can only see her through the classroom partition. She tells us that friends don't last forever and they'll eventually betray us, but Hinako has to decide if their worth is justified. After getting the door open, she disappears. Making our way to the other side of the school, we see that the floral blight is starting to make its way here, and the school itself is even creepier than it was before. Finally finding the keys, we go back to Shu and Rinko, but instead of leaving, they tell me to rest. So Hinako gives Shu the keys, and they say they'll keep watch over us while Hinako sleeps. Personally, I would rather continue up the mountains, but whatever. As we're waking up in the dark shrine from our earlier lava tasting, we hear Foxmask talking to us. He mentions that Hinako once saved his life, and in return, he wants to save her soul by claiming the life of her old self. Seeing that we're awake, he helps us to our feet so we can continue through the shrine. Once we're inside, he tells us he'll start some preparations, so he wants us to go bid our farewells. Whatever that means. Coming to a locked door that needs 2 keys, we see there's 2 open doors nearby. Choosing one at random, we come to an area where we see Rinko locked in a cage that's suspended above lava. Here, we have to find 3 crests and put them into the machine that's holding her. Searching for these crests, we end up in the candy store, then Rinko's bedroom, where at one point we see her room covered with pictures of Shu, and later, pictures of Hinako that are scribbled and scratched out, finally ending in one of our middle school classrooms. Finding all the crests, we put them in the machine while Rinko berates us, saying that we played with his heart but never saying who he is, even though we know she's talking about Shu. We get the first key. Going through the other door, we step into Sakuko's bedroom, where we find a note mentioning that she's afraid of the dark. So in this area, there are these evil warding lights that affect enemies. Killing them while near the lights causes them to completely die instead of getting back up again. While looking for Sakuko, we find a rabbit pen, where we learn about the first time she and Hinako met before finally finding her in a dimly lit room, also locked in a cage. After solving a puzzle, we extinguish the lights in the room and grab the key, but as Sakuko begs us to help her, we leave. Using the 2 keys, we go through the main door and hear Shu behind another door. To get this last one open, we have to find 2 items from his past. After getting jump scared to death, what the we find a drawing of Hinako, and while looking for the next item, we come across one of the most disturbing enemies in the game, the Hatcher. The Hatcher is a creature covered in pregnant stomachs that births enemies endlessly. It'll keep spawning new enemies until it's defeated. Defeating it, we find one of Shu's comic books. Returning to and opening the door, we see Shu suspended from the ceiling, where he tells us that whatever we decide to do, he'll respect our decision. And Hinako pulls a lever, strangling him. Now that we've bid farewell to our friends, we meet up with Foxmask. Hinako's upset and starts apologizing for what she did, but she says it had to be done, while Foxmask apologizes for making her do it. The two seem to be getting closer, but as we start to move forward, another headache knocks Hinako out. Back in the school, we wake up to see Shu and Rinko both gone, with the gate we got the keys for being open. Hinako questions why Shu would leave her, but decides to stick to the plan, hoping to run into them at his house. Just as we start to move, the fog monster comes back and chases us into the mountains. After escaping, we look for a way to Shu's house and find another gate that of course is locked. Looking for the key, we find it in a nearby shed, and on our way back, the fog monster shows up again to chase us down. It tries to block our path with the blight, and other monsters get in our way, but we finally escape it when we pass through a torii gate. Finally making it to Shu's house, the front door is locked, but don't worry. Going around the house to his shed, we find the key, but there's also a note written by Shu. In this note, he mentions how he thinks Hinako gets headaches from her poor family situation. His parents are pharmacists, so when he found out about her headaches, he recommended some pills to her, but Hinako started asking for them more and more often, like she was addicted. He didn't like that, so he switched her over to the pills we've been taking throughout the game. Inside the house, neither Shu or Rinko are there. Instead, In the dark shrine, we're walking while holding hands with Foxmask. He tells us that there will be pain and suffering ahead, with Hinako having to undergo 3 rituals if we want to continue. Hinako says she's not scared, all while her doll tries to give her another warning.
Run, hurry. There's no going back.
Making it to the first ritual room, maidens wearing fox masks bring out a fox's arm and a saw, and everyone watches as Hinako painfully saws off her own arm and the maidens replace it with the fox's. In the next room, the maidens use a hot iron to brand a symbol onto our back. And in the final room, they slowly cut the top half of skin off of Hinako's face, sewing a fox's mask into her open wound. And as she sees her new self, one bloody tear streams down her face. Completing all these trials gives Hinako new abilities. With the fox's arm, we no longer use traditional weapons whenever we're in the dark shrine. Instead, Hinako swings her new arm at enemies. The brand lets us go into rooms that we couldn't before, and gives us access to bestial form, which is an ability that makes Hinako's attack stronger and makes us invincible for a short time. And finally, the mask lets us move through certain walls, helping us find new areas or create shortcuts. With Hinako fully resembling a member of the Fox Clan, it's time for us to walk hand in hand with Foxmask to the worship hall. A crowd of people all wearing fox masks watch us. As we walk past them, we hear a bell and see one mask is different from the others. It's Junko, wishing us the best in our new life. As we're blessed by the wedding officiant, the doll appears with another message.
Remember, your name is Shimizu Hinako.
When we look up, the officiant tries to attack us. Turning out to be Rinko, Hinako pleads with her to stop, saying that after this, we'll be gone for good. But Rinko doesn't care and attacks anyway, starting a boss fight against her. After defeating her, we get another headache, with Hinako questioning who she is before passing out. Back at Shu's house, the phone inside starts to ring. When we answer it, we hear Hinako's mom asking us to come home. But in the background, we hear Shu. After hearing this, Junko appears again. She tells us we're running out of time to decide our future, but when we try to talk to her, she vanishes. With Junko gone, Hinako remembers the phone call and decides to rush back to her house. Ebisugaoka is now covered in the floral blight, and there's way more monsters on the street, forcing us into a lot of hard fights on our way back home. Once we get back to town, we see a park that hasn't been touched by the blight at all. Stepping in, we see a flashback of a young boy hurt and bleeding on the ground after being attacked by a fox. The other kids in the park panic and start scrambling to get someone for help, but a girl shows up. She calms the fox down, then helps the boy. After thanking her, the boy introduces himself as Kotoyuki, and the girl, Hinako Shimizu. This boy, Kotoyuki, is Foxmask, and this is Hinako's memory of when they first met. Before leaving the park, we find a letter he wrote to Hinako saying that he's moving out of town, and continuing back home, we go through waves of enemies, finally arriving at the best and worst place in the entire game, the Shimizu residence. Let me explain. The Shimizu residence is the best place in the game because with her home having so much importance in her life, we come across a lot of different memories and notes that help us learn more about Hinako as well as her family and friends. Now it's the worst place in the game because yeah, bro, I'm done for the day. Looking for Shu and Rinko, we find 2 locked doors, one needing 3 crests, while the other needs 1 big one. Starting with the smaller 3, we search through 3 different versions of the house. While searching, we find a note about Hinako's father, telling us that he used to be a fisherman. After working for years, he saved up his money and decided to open a restaurant, but somehow ended up losing everything and taking on debt. There's also a note mentioning the debt was paid off somehow. Back to the crests, we find the first one in a pendulum after making the scales even, the second after flipping a few pictures, and the third after watching a memory of Hinako standing up to her father. She says since he got tricked and lost all the savings he was supposed to use to benefit their family, all he does is treat his family horribly and should apologize to everyone for what he's done to them. But he doesn't listen and instead throws a knife at his daughter, making her mom rush to stop him and tell Hinako to leave the house while she tries to calm him down. Now that we have all 3 crests, we enter the place closest to Hinako, her bedroom. We find the big crest for the other door, but when we pick it up, we see a flashback of Hinako hiding something in her room before taking the pill Shu gave her. When the flashback is over, we go to leave the room, but when we do, the Hinako from the flashback breaks out of the memory and talks to us directly, having a conversation with herself about not having a grasp of who she is or understanding her own feelings. This Hinako tells us that physically we're the same person, but mentally we're not, while berating us about pretending like we don't understand everything that's been happening around us, finishing her statement by telling us she'll kill us and everyone we know, especially Shu, who doesn't even see Hinako as a woman. We start yelling, telling her that Shu is special and we won't let her kill him. But after saying that, she's gone. So we take the crest and continue looking for Shu and Rinko. Opening the other door, we step through and find Shu, Rinko, and Sakuko hanging from the ceiling. And in the next room, we see Hinako's parents greeting us and having a good time, but the scene continuously changes, showing the father Hinako sees here and the memories of the true father she knows at home, and then with her dad throwing the knife at her again, triggering Hinako's trauma from that situation as her father and mother transform into monsters, putting us into a boss battle. During this fight, her parents both continuously tell us about what a woman's role in society is and how Hinako doesn't ever act like a traditional woman. Another thing I think is interesting about this fight is throughout the game, the enemies have an attack where they lunge at and grab you. Hinako's mom has an attack like this, but if she grabs us, instead of attacking us directly, she throws us at our father's feet instead. I thought it was interesting because even in this form, it shows how she does what she thinks is a woman's role and lets the father discipline his children. But after defeating them, they leave the room and we follow behind, where we find them face to face with the fog monster before it kills them both as Hinako watches. Back in the shrine, Kotoyuki, formerly known as Fox Mask, puts a brooch on our shirt, saying that it's proof that Hinako belongs to him. Taking us by the hand, he tells us there's one more thing he needs to show us. We come to a mural, and to get past it, we have to solve a puzzle. But to solve it, we have to find 3 more crests. You know, before looking at all the clips for this video, I never noticed how many locked doors there are in this game. Battling our way through the shrine, we find the crests. But before we get the last one, Junko asks Kotoyuki for permission to talk to us, which I think is crazy, having to ask for permission to talk to your own sister. She asks if we've killed something, and when we're confused about what she means, she tells us we have one more day to do it, or she'll kill us instead. Taking the final crest, we solve the mural puzzle and enter a room where Hinako and Kotoyuki exchange rings, using these rings to open a door that has a vine boom sound effect. Back in front of the Shimizu residence, Hinako cries in a pool of her parents' blood, while monsters start to surround her. In a fit of rage, we chase after the fog monster, dying about 1,000 times as we battle our way through wave after wave of enemies, with Hinako commenting about how ugly the town looks now covered in the floral blight. Finally catching up to the fog monster at the candy store, we can see that it has the same fox arm we do when we're in the dark shrine. Wanting revenge for her parents, Hinako tries to attack the monster to no avail, and while it holds us in the air, our older sister, Junko, appears and commands the monster to kill us. Back in the shrine, Hinako returns to the worship hall, while members of the Fox clan make comments about her, some welcoming her, while others say she shouldn't be here. We see Kotoyuki waiting for us, and when we get to him, 2 maidens bring out what I assume to be an offering, giving one to each of us. After placing them on the altar, Kotoyuki backs away from us, as Hinako's body gets covered in hives, flowers blooming out of her, only to reveal that Hinako has been the fog monster the entire time. Back at the candy store, the Hinako of Ebisugaoka fades away as we take control of Fox Hinako in town for the first time. After battling our way down the mountain, it's time to climb up one more time and go back home. Hinako now mentions how beautiful the town looks covered in the floral blight, but as we make our way up the mountain, our dog gives us multiple warnings to stop.
Don't go that way. You won't be able to see your father or mother anymore. You won't be able to stay as you are now.
Every time we see it, monsters swarm us and we have to defeat them all. After defeating all the monsters and reaching home, we see our parents waiting outside for us. Hinako's mother looks happy, but her father won't even look at her, crying, telling us this isn't our home anymore. We transform back into the fog monster and kill them both. Now back where we started the first time we entered the Dark Shrine, the two Hinekos have switched places. Moving along, we see our doll for the last time, asking it to help us destroy everything. No longer scared like she was the first time we came here, we take down all the monsters that get in our way. And after taking one last stroll through all the rooms we've been through, we make it back to the worship hall where we find Junko waiting for us. She questions why we're still alive after what happened, but Hineko asks how she could betray us. Junko tries to get Hineko to remember why we're even here, but thinking about it leads Hineko to have an internal crisis. She starts rambling, questioning where we are and why we're here. Remember when I said, there are multiple healing items in the game, but these painkillers are some of the best, so we'll be using them to heal ourselves a lot. I used them to heal small attacks and big attacks. I used them just walking around, and I used them during and after boss battles, and all of that led to this. As Hineko rambles, she starts taking handfuls of the pills, saying they help her calm down. Junko gets worried, saying she shouldn't be taking that many pills and tries to wrestle them away from us. Breaking away from her, we walk over to the altar and destroy it. And after this, Fox Hineko appears. We tell her that she took everything from us, our family, our friends, and even our own identity. Wanting revenge for all of this, we start the final battle with the fog monster, where we learn its true name, the Shiromuku. I try to take the monster down, but even with the pills, I end up losing. But Hineko is really determined to win this fight, because this is the only time in the game where if you die,
絶対に認めない。ひな子を渡したりなんかしない。
she says she won't give up and gets back up to continue. You can't just cheese the boss using this though, because it only happens twice. The first time, you come back with 50% health, and the second, you come back with 25. After defeating herself, Hineko swings her pipe around crazily as enemies start to surround her. Running from the shrine, we follow a trail of pills while Hineko keeps getting headaches. Each one takes us somewhere we visited before and we hear her memories. First, we hear people upset with her, with Hineko saying she wants to be left alone. Kotoyuki tries to talk to her, asking why she's doing whatever she is. He's upset because he thought he showed Hineko that he cared for and understood her. Next, we hear Sakuko mentioning a promise she and Hineko made to each other before she calls us a traitor. Then, Rinko pleading with us before saying we stole Shu from her and she'll never forgive us. And lastly, we hear Shu apologizing to us, saying that he's sorry that he messed up. As we keep running, we eventually see a red light seeping through the shrine exit as we walk past piles of pills. When we make it outside, we hear and see police sirens, and as both Hineko and Fox Hineko scream into the sky, the scene cuts to black. Afterwards, we see a crime scene and hear police chatter about a female suspect in her 20s, wearing a wedding dress and taking pills. This woman has killed multiple people at a wedding venue, and even more as she ran away. And as the camera pans over our pipe and the box of pills we've been using, the scene fades. And then, credits. After finishing the game, I was confused. Obviously, I could see there was a bigger picture to the story, but I couldn't put everything together. From what I understood, when Hineko was a child, she struggled to hang out with other girls because she liked to play games with the boys. Because of this, the girls didn't want her around. She eventually met some friends. First Shu, who came to be her best friend. Then there was Sakuko and Rinko. Around this time, she also met Kotoyuki. Growing up, Hineko lived in a toxic household where her father abused her, her mother, and her sister, while her mother would just take the abuse and say that it's a woman's role. So Hineko saw this as what a traditional woman is supposed to be. Junko looked out for Hineko through all these times, but ended up getting married and moving out, becoming a traditional woman herself, leaving Hineko alone. She looked for solace in her best friend Shu, and her other friends Sakuko and Rinko from time to time, meeting them at the candy store, while Rinko would be jealous because she had a crush on Shu and didn't like how close he and Hineko were. With her family life getting worse by the day, Hineko started to get stress headaches. With Shu's parents being pharmacists, he started giving her pills that were supposed to help them, but Hineko started to get addicted to them, taking way more than she needed to. At some point in her life, she and Kotoyuki met again and were going to get married, but with the stress of what she's seen at home her whole life, she snapped, most likely from trying to calm herself down and overdosing on the pills. She killed everyone, her fiance, her friends, and her family, all on her wedding day. Everything we played through is what's going on in her mind, with the progression of the floral blight in the world representing how far gone she is. I love when games take something you don't even think about, like a healing item, and make it an important part of the story. But even with taking those pieces and trying to put them together myself, some things still don't make sense or even have answers. Why did Sakuko call us a traitor all the time? How did Kotoyuki come back into Hinako's life? And what's up with the pill Shu gave us? Well, after completing the game for the first time, we unlock New Game Plus, and with that, the game tells us we can see changes in the story and new endings. There's 5 total endings in this game, with the first one purposely leaving out the full picture. The next 3 add new lore and understanding to the events that happen in the game, and the last one is just a joke ending, saying that Ebisugaoka is empty because of an alien invasion. Starting the game again, we can see more of the story and learn the truth of what's going on with new cutscenes, notes, and journal entries along the way to give us more insight, while fulfilling certain conditions can trigger one of the other endings. Now, I'll talk about the differences in each playthrough and give an explanation on each once we finish them all. As we get to the different endings, the gameplay is the same and a lot will be redundant if I explained every little detail again, so I won't be going over everything except for the main differences. Starting the story again, the first thing we notice is Hinako's already wearing the brooch Kotoyuki gave us as proof that we belong to him. Fast forward to her house, and the conversation is different. Instead of her dad yelling about how she has no respect, this time, the argument's about Hinako's feelings and how she's going to help him pay off the debt that we learned about near the end of the first playthrough. This is the true conversation of this scene, unlike the first time. From here, things are the same until we escape from the fog monster, with the most important part of the next 3 playthroughs being that we don't take any of the pills Shu gave to us at all. The next differences don't come until we defeat Sakuko in the Dark Shrine. After drinking the lava, we see flashes of the 3 rituals we went through, so the next time we come to the shrine, we'll already have all the fox abilities, skipping that section entirely. Leaving Rinko's house and heading to the school, we find a note written by Sakuko to Hinako. In it, she mentions the game The Fox's Sacrifice, explaining that it's a game where kids write their names on a chalkboard and the fox tells their futures, with one of the kids being granted good luck. But she warns us that it's not just a game. The fox isn't just telling their futures, it's deciding them, finishing the note by asking Hinako to promise that she'll never play the game. That didn't matter, because when we get to the school, we find a new classroom where we see the results of a Fox's Sacrifice game. Hinako disappeared, Sakuko has a heart attack, Rinko burns to death, Shu gets suffocated, and Kotoyuki's wishes will come true. Back in the classroom where we complete the puzzle, instead of Junko telling us friends don't last, this time she says it's time to say goodbye to our friends, and we're going to have to kill them with our own hands. Returning to the shrine, we can use the brooch to go into a new room where we find an unfinished letter Kotoyuki was writing to Hinako, reassuring her about moving into his estate after their marriage. Exploring a little more, we find Rinko's diary, where she writes a lot about how much she loves Shu, hates Hinako and thinks she's hurting Shu, and thinks she's truly better than everyone else. In the rabbit pen, we find an observation log on Sakuko. While playing with a rabbit one day, she decides to name it after the girl she says abandoned her, Hinako. Ending off by saying she forgot to bring what she needed to cut off Hinako's arms and legs. Making it back to Shu's house and going in the shed, the note he leaves for Hinako is different. It's a goodbye, wishing her well in her marriage and thanking her for their friendship. Hinako cries and decides to leave the pills behind, saying she'll be fine on her own, removing them from our inventory. Walking down the stairs in the Dark Shrine, Kotoyuki isn't with us. Hinako walks alone, holding hands with and speaking to nobody, while telling herself she'll do what she must to be the perfect person for him. Back at Shu's house, when Junko appears again, she tells us it's kill or be killed, telling Hinako only she can decide her fate, but on this specific day, making the decision to stay alive will come at a great price. Returning to the most important area in the game, we see new memories. A conversation between Shu and Hinako where he tells her to continue being herself. A conversation between Hinako and her mom where Hinako tells her she's embarrassed by the girly clothes she brings her. Another conversation between the two with her mom telling her to speak with her inner self about the decision she has to make, but Hinako gets upset and tells her mom she hates her and never wants to be like her. And lastly, a memory of a time she was reading letters in her room. All the letters were sent by Kotoyuki, but she rushes to hide them when her mom tells her that Shu wants to talk to her. After this, we talk to our inner self again. The other Hinako tells us to die, saying that if we die, then she can be reborn. She says the days of living under our parents and playing with our friends won't last, and they'll all leave us behind. We ask her to stop, but all that does is make her more angry. She says we're giving up, and for that, she'll have to kill us. But if we don't want to die, then we'll have to kill her. She admits to being scared of marriage, saying that one day someone can be happy, and the next, a completely different person, mentioning that her dad used to smile and tells us that we can't let anyone else decide what happiness is for us. But before she disappears,
私が勇気を与 からお前が翼をくれ。
leaving behind a key to the drawer in Hinako's room. Opening this drawer, we find tons of letters sent by Kotoyuki. The next time we meet Junko in the shrine, she asks if our other self is still alive. When we tell her yes, she tells us we need to kill her. This is what she was talking about in the first playthrough, when she asked if it was still alive. And what she meant during this playthrough, when she told us making the decision to stay alive would come at a great price. She means Hinako's other personality, the one from Ebisugaoka that refuses to change, needs to die. Making it back to the worship hall, where Junko meets us for the last time, she tells us to accept our fate. Hinako Shimizu no longer exists, and the longer she clings to life, the longer Fox Hinako has to suffer. Our doll stops her from talking, and Fox Hinako shows up. We tell her she took everything from us, with her responding that our friends and family can always come to visit us, leading to a clash between them. Being knocked down, we rise up like we're possessed when Kotoyuki shows up. Seeing us with the dark energy swarming around us, he says to Fox Hinako, but what he's calling a foul possession is just Hinako's other personality. He banishes her away, wiping her from existence, leaving only Fox Hinako, completing his personal mission of saving her soul by transforming her into a traditional woman and the wife he wants her to be. As he goes to comfort Fox Hinako, Shu shows up and attacks him, but he stops when we shield his body. Shu's upset that Hinako's going to leave with Kotoyuki, and Hinako admits she wishes that she and Shu could stay together like they always have. When he runs off, we chase after him, where he tells us that he gave us the pills so that we could talk to our inner self, but also because he didn't want us to get married. See, he knows that the pills are dangerous, and he has a crush on Hinako, so instead of confessing to her, he gave her pills that made her get into her own head and start fighting with herself in the hopes that she would reject the marriage. Remember in the first ending where we heard him apologize? Well, this is what he was sorry for. But Hinako surprisingly isn't upset, saying she could never hate her best friend, as Shu becomes possessed by the Tsukumogami, leading to the final boss of this playthrough. After winning the battle, Shu and Kotoyuki argue about the ownership of Hinako, coming to their own conclusion that they may be able to be friends one day, with neither of them thinking about or listening to what Hinako might want, treating her as if she's not even there. But she decides to hug them both as they look out into the distance. Seeing a glimpse into the future where Hinako and Kotoyuki are now married, they go into their house. But we can hear Hinako in a panic, screaming that she's scared and doesn't want to be like her mother. It's her inner self, the peeled off face of the Hinako we met in the bedroom, and as she pleads, Kotoyuki comes back and stomps her out. On our third playthrough, once we get to the Dark Shrine, we find more of Rinko and Sakuko's diaries. Rinko writes about eventually realizing the way that she treated Hinako was wrong, and instead of hating her, she could have talked to her and learned more about Shu, admitting that she looks down on others and doesn't deserve to be called a friend by Hinako, Sakuko, or Shu. But we also see just how crazy about Shu she is, writing things like she wants to eat his intestines so that they can be closer. Rinko is honestly a really crazy girl, a yandere, willing to get other girls out the way to get to the boy that she wants. We learn from Sakuko's diary, she made Hinako promise her that they would do everything together, getting boyfriends at the same time and even getting married together. So this is why she's been calling Hinako a traitor, because she sees Hinako getting married first as a betrayal of the promise they made. But she apologizes, saying she'll go to the wedding with a smile on her face. In the Shimizu residence, we see a memory of Junko and Hinako's mom both comforting Hinako after a time the girls in town wouldn't let her play with them, with Hinako questioning, After this, we see Hinako asking Shu for advice on her decision to get married, with Shu telling her it's something she needs to decide. This is also the conversation where Hinako gets her first headache in front of Shu, telling him the medicine she's been taking doesn't work, and he says he'll find something better for her. Back in Hinako's room, we see her hat and all of Kotoyuki's letters before Shu comes over. When Shu's in her room, she goes to the bathroom, and he starts looking through her stuff and finds a letter. When Hinako comes back, she kicks him out, saying it's none of his business. Talking to our inner self, she asks us if something's wrong with her, saying she's been feeling weird, so she asks Sakuko about it, and Sakuko said what she's feeling is love. Hinako questions this though. She says it feels nice, but at the same time, like she's being forced to love, which she basically is. She asks us what we think the feeling is, and we tell her whatever it is, it's not the same as what they felt for Shu. After the talk, we see in Hinako's journal that she has some feelings for Shu, but wants them to stay as friends, even though part of her wants him to see her as a woman. Back in the shrine, we find Kotoyuki's diary, where he talks about getting saved by Hinako and can't stop thinking about her. When he becomes the heir to his clan, he can do whatever he wants, and what he wants is to make Hinako his wife. In the worship hall, Junko asks why we can't accept what's happening. She agrees that marriage can be scary, but Hinako can overcome those feelings and go through with the marriage. Hinako tells her sister,
乗り越えるかどうかは私が決めること。誰にも勝手に決めさせてくれない。
Fox Hinako shows up, telling us it's too late and the wedding is happening. After arguing about which of our decisions is right, we tell her to go back to being Hinako Shimizu, starting the boss fight against her. There's nothing new here, it's the same fight as it was in the first playthrough. But after winning the battle, Kotoyuki steps in, claiming he doesn't recognize us, because the Hinako he knows would never act this way, meaning the Hinako that he's created. Shu shows up to help us, angering Kotoyuki, causing him to transform into the Shishibi. He tells us that from here on, we're doing things his way. He will make Hinako his wife, and she needs to abandon her old life, which starts the final boss. During the battle, Hinako explains to Kotoyuki that her happiness is something she decides, and not something that's given to her. After defeating him, Hinako tells him she'll never forget the kindness that he showed to her before running away from the shrine with Shu. We stop in front of the candy store, where Hinako tells Shu he looks weird wearing a tie, and he tells Hinako she looks weird wearing her wedding dress. In Hinako's mind, she still sees herself and Shu as kids, but in reality, they just ran from the wedding ceremony, both still wearing their formal attire. For our final playthrough, we found a statue near the Shimizu residence. Here, Hinako removes the brooch Kotoyuki gave us and sets it as an offering, saying she needs time to think about if she's worthy of accepting it. Entering the residence for the final time, we see a memory of Hinako asking Junko how she met her husband. Junko tells her that their parents found a matchmaker and chose who they thought was right for her. Hinako doesn't understand how she can marry someone she doesn't even know, but Junko tells her,
恋愛結婚も素敵だと思うけれど、恋は盲目。籍を入れた後に相手の嫌な面に気づいても遅いのよ。
Hinako obviously doesn't agree with her sister or the women who say that being married and having kids is what makes a woman happy. She doesn't care if she ends up miserable. She wants to decide her own happiness, her own fate. Junko doesn't disagree with this, but she knows that way of life isn't for her, saying maybe one day there will come a time when a woman can choose her own happiness, hoping Hinako can experience it. After this, we see Hinako's mom. She wants to talk to us about Hinako's father and her married life, telling us that when he was a fisherman, he had a best friend who was like a brother to him. Together, they wanted to open a restaurant, so her dad gave him his savings, but that friend ended up scamming him and disappearing with all his money. That's when his attitude started to change and he became who he is today. He didn't want to seem weak in front of his daughters because of his pride, but when it was just him and his wife, he was calm. Hinako tells her mother that that's no excuse for everything he did to them, and I agree with her. Her mom knows that from what Hinako's seen at home, she thinks that married women are just supposed to take their husband's abuse, so she shares stories about times she and her husband fought and she got the upper hand, finishing the conversation with a heartfelt apology that brings them both to tears. Now our final time in Hinako's room was a real surprise. We watch her dad come to her and apologize for everything he's done, admitting he'd been a terrible father. He thought a father should be feared by his kids, and he now sees that he was wrong. But after years of abuse, Hinako obviously doesn't accept his apology, rejecting everything he has to say, leading to something different. Instead of the inner self breaking out and talking to us, we step in as the inner self this time, reminding her of the story our mom told us. We tell her that we don't have to forgive him, but we should at least hear what he has to say. He tells us that Kotoyuki isn't like him, and he'll give Hinako a good life. He even admits to thinking that Hinako and Shu look good together, finishing his apology by telling Hinako getting married or not is her choice. After the conversation, Hinako admits to herself that she's still scared of him and she doesn't forgive him, but she does understand him. Our final time in the worship hall, Junko questions which Hinako we are. Hinako Shimizu, the girl from Ebisugaoka who wants to make her own happiness going against what other women think is normal, or Fox Hinako, the girl who conformed to what others wanted and changed everything about herself to be the perfect wife. Hinako doesn't answer. She tells Junko that someone's been manipulating her. Someone wants her to get married while there's someone else who doesn't. These two are constantly pressuring and rushing her to make decisions, making her fight against herself. She now realizes that the two of them, Hinako Shimizu and Fox Hinako, have to fight together. When Fox Hinako shows up, the two question why they have to fight each other, and as they finally begin seeing eye to eye, their bodies move on their own, making them strangle each other, as we see two yokai appear behind them. Kyubi, who's been controlling Fox Hinako, and through the doll, a Tsukumogami controls Hinako Shimizu. As the two yokai argue, Kotoyuki comes and separates us, knocking himself out in the process, and as Fox Hinako tries to help him, Kyubi tells her a prophecy. Once every few decades, there's a girl born who's blessed with a divine power. When she's born, a spell is placed on the heir to the Fox clan, who this time happens to be Kotoyuki. This spell makes the heir have a desperate desire to find this girl and make her his wife, calling Kotoyuki a failure because he can't seduce Hinako. This makes Hinako angry because she sees a good man in Kotoyuki and she's seen all the work he's put in to try and make her happy. So she stands up to Kyubi, starting my favorite moment in the game, the final boss. During the fight, Hinako tells Kyubi she originally had no feelings for Kotoyuki, but as she got to know him, she started having some feelings, mentioning she had to think hard just like he did about her decision. Just like the other bosses, this goes on, but the reason this is my favorite fight is because after doing enough damage to Kyubi, we switch to Hinako Shimizu fighting the Tsukumogami inhabiting the doll that's been following us throughout the game. She tells it, unlike other women, being married isn't the thing that'll bring her happiness. Now switching back and forth between the two, with both Hinakos finally fighting for the right to choose her own path, they defeat both of the yokai. With them defeated, the Dark Shrine starts to crumble. Kotoyuki leads us to safety and apologizes for not realizing that Hinako might have other feelings, now wanting to know if his own feelings for Hinako are real or not because of what Kyubi said. Hinako tells him that if the feelings are real, she hopes to meet him again someday and she'll have an answer for him. He hugs us one last time as the shrine crumbles and we're sent back to Ebisugaoka. In town, we read a letter sent by Kotoyuki, where he updates Hinako on his life, now trying to reconnect with his inner child, live to the fullest, and reevaluate his feelings for Hinako. With the town now completely empty aside from Hinako, there's nobody pressuring her to make a decision. She can finally talk with her inner self about her future, saying she wants to find a passion, while still keeping an open mind about Kotoyuki. The two sit on top of a torii gate, overlooking an empty Ebisugaoka, a town all to herself, as the bell she gave Junko at the start chimes one last time. And that's Silent Hill F. I like the story, and honestly, I think it was great from start to finish. Confusing at times, but constantly keeping me guessing about what really happened. I'm not gonna lie, playing the game from the beginning 4 different times was annoying, but if it had me coming back over and over again to see what was new, even if it was something minuscule, then I think it's safe to say I didn't really mind. Silent Hill F is a story about Hinako Shimizu, a girl born in the wrong era, trying to find her place in a world that expects her to be like everyone else. The stress of constantly being abused by her father and seeing her mother submit to him, then being forced into a marriage, all of that on top of a growing addiction to pills will make anyone go crazy, causing her personality to split in 2 ways. If you're at all confused, there aren't 2 Hinakos, just 2 different personalities and thought patterns coming from the same girl. Do I agree with the way Hinako handled the situation? No, but I can definitely see what drove her to it. Each ending is good at showing Hinako as a character and the lengths she and those around her will go to get what they want. I think the first ending is the true aftermath of her wedding, fleeing the scene after killing her family and friends due to the stress of the decision she had to make, while endings 2 and 3 are both what-if stories. If she chose chose to get married, she would have done what was expected of her, but would have lived in constant fear of Kotoyuki changing one day. If she would have left him at the altar, she would have been going against what was expected, but she would have been more happy. Her not being able to make this decision is what leads us to the first ending. I don't really like the fourth ending because I feel like it takes away the grounded nature of the story. Sure, the story's already out there with monsters chasing us around and Hinako getting fox powers, but the true story was about Hinako being forced into an arranged marriage and not knowing what to do. Saying everything between her and Kotoyuki was orchestrated by spirits just doesn't sit right with me because the story can work without that. Hinako was a girl that didn't fit in, and Kotoyuki was a boy that had status and wealth, deciding he wanted Hinako. Saying that she has some special powers we never see and Kotoyuki's actually under a spell was just dumb to me. Something I haven't mentioned was the storytelling in the main menu. To explain, the first time you start the game, you see Ebisugaoka. As you make progress, the floral blight covers more and more of the screen. This symbolizes Hinako's mental state deteriorating until it covers most of the screen. After choosing to get married, it'll be a torii gate surrounded by the floral blight. I think this shows that even though Hinako chose something that should make her happy, from what other women say, her mind still goes crazy, constantly in fear that Kotoyuki will change like her dad. After leaving with Shu, it'll be the candy store, also covered in the blight. I think the candy store represents Hinako's childhood for how often it shows up in the story, and the blight also shows that even though she made the decision to not get married, it still eats at her, wondering if she made the right choice. And after finishing the final ending, it'll be both sides of Hinako sitting on top of the torii gate, finally at peace with herself. I like this because these scenes show so little, but mean so much. But what really happened? After looking through all the notes, seeing every ending, and taking everything we know about the story, I have a theory that I think makes sense. Hinako Shimizu is a girl who never fit in with other girls as a child because she liked to play games with the boys. The girls started to shun her and she didn't have any friends, so her older sister would always look out for her and play with her. One day, she met Shu, who would grow to be her best friend because unlike the other kids, he just saw her as another kid. Sometime after this, she met Sakuko, who also didn't have any friends, so she went a little overboard making Hinako promise to do everything together. And later, Rinko, who only hung around her so she could get closer to Shu. One day, while playing in the park, a boy got attacked by a fox, this fox being Kyubi. While the other kids panicked, Hinako helped the fox first, then the boy. With him introducing himself as Kotoyuki, he fell in love with her instantly. He started to hang out with her group, and one day, they all played the fox's sacrifice together. After playing this game, they set all their fortunes in motion without even knowing. Sometime later, Kotoyuki had to move away from Ebisugaoka, leaving Hinako a note in the park. As Hinako grew up, her family life started to change. Her dad went into debt and started abusing his family, while she watched her mom take his abuse every day. She didn't understand why her mom would just subject herself to that. She would see other women always talking about how they couldn't wait to get married, but from what she saw at home, she couldn't understand why. Whenever she needed to get away, she would go see her friends at the candy store, it becoming a sort of a safe space for her. Her parents set up an arranged marriage for her sister, causing her to move out. On her sister's wedding day, she and Hinako talk, with Hinako giving her a bell for good fortune. Sometime later, Kotoyuki came back to Ebisugaoka. Now a man of status and wealth, he proposed to Hinako, pinning a brooch on her as a symbol that she belongs to him. Hinako's dad jumped at the opportunity to marry Hinako to him, seeing Kotoyuki's wealth as a way to pay off his debt. He and her mother arranged a marriage between the two. Hinako should be jumping for joy, right? That's what any other girl would do. But she's different. Hinako didn't know if she wanted to marry him or not because of the example of married life she sees at home. So she talked to the people around her, her sister, Sakuko, and eventually Shu, leading her to tell him about her frequent headaches. Shu, having a crush on her, takes the opportunity to give her some pills that help her talk to her inner self more easily. So she starts getting into her own head, causing a split in her personality. Later, Kotoyuki started sending Hinako letters to convince her how much he loved her. Reading each one made her feel different. Hinako's personalities couldn't agree. One side thinking getting married would be fine and it's what's supposed to make a woman happy, while the other wanted to keep being who she is, making her own decisions and being herself. Taking the pills, she starts talking with herself more and more, trying to come up with an answer, but she just couldn't choose, leading her to start fighting with herself and taking even more pills just to calm down. This goes on for weeks. One day, her mother sits her down and talks to her, telling her about her and her father's relationship. And as the day gets closer, her father apologizes for the way he's treated her, telling her it's her decision to get married or not. But it's too late. The day is here, and Hinako never made up her mind. All the arrangements are set. On her wedding day, she leaves home in her dress, her mother smiling at her happily, while her father won't even look at her, now upset with himself because of what he's done. At the venue, the people in Kotoyuki's family start to talk about her, some welcoming her, while others say she shouldn't be here. Hinako starts having second thoughts and walks away to think. Kotoyuki tries to talk to her, but it doesn't work. Junko tries talking to her and sees that Hinako is taking a lot of pills, probably to calm herself down, but they're having the opposite effect. Junko tries to wrestle them from her, and Hinako grabs the nearest weapon she can find, a random metal pipe. This is probably where she hits her sister before destroying the altar. After this, she kills multiple people at the wedding, Kotoyuki included. As people try to stop her, she runs away, hunting down her family and friends. After she calms down from her high, she realizes what she's done and disappears from Ebisugaoka. Even the cops can't find her wherever she is. What we play through is Hinako reliving the events of everything leading up to the end of her wedding in her head, with the floral blight symbolizing how her mental state deteriorates and the dark shrine symbolizing the wedding venue itself. In her head, she sees herself and her friends as teenagers, probably trying to find some connection to a happier time in the wake of what she's done. She starts thinking of what she could have done differently, which is how we get What If endings 2 and 3, leading her to finally understand herself, having her two personalities come together as one. Wherever Hinako is, she finally understands herself better and was finally able to find peace within herself, and that's a good thing for her, but in the end, the true destruction is already done. This might be wrong, but it's what I came up with after thinking about this story for months. At first, I thought mixing ending 1 and 4 would get me an ending where Kotoyuki is still alive and he and Hinako meet sometime in the future, but then I started to reconsider some things and got to this conclusion. I may be wrong about some characters and their motivations, but still, speaking of the characters, let's go a little deeper about them. The most important thing about this game are its characters. Like I said earlier, they're the backbone of the entire story. But one thing that I haven't mentioned is that all the enemies are representations of the people in Hinako's life. Most of what we learn about both the characters and enemies come from Hinako's journal entries and the notes we find throughout the game. That added context completely changes how their actions and conversations come across, and even makes you look at the enemies differently, adding a layer of depth that makes them feel like real people. One thing I've brought up throughout this whole thing, but haven't really mentioned, is Hinako's journal. It's one of the most important pieces of storytelling in the game. She constantly updates it with new information about the places we've been and her personal thoughts about the characters and enemies as we play, even updating the way she draws her friends and family as we progress through the story. I was going to go over the journal a lot more, but there's just so many entries, we would have been here all day. Reading about all the characters and enemies was always interesting, and I love seeing that journal update notification pop up. Hinako is a very interesting character straight out of the box. From what I knew about Silent Hill, the only way to ever end up in these scenarios was to have done something bad in your life. Meeting her for the first time kept me questioning what she could have done, because from first appearances, she just seems like an average girl. Following her through her mind, we learn so much about who she is. A girl who was just born in the wrong time, just wanting better for herself. She's easily become one of my favorite characters in gaming. Meeting Junko for the first time, we see that she has a good relationship with her sister, but my mind instantly started wondering how their relationship changed after looking in Hinako's journal for the first time and seeing that her face was scratched out. You never actually see Junko's face in the game. It's either off screen or behind a mask, but you can get a small glimpse of her looking at the picture from her wedding day. She's a mature woman who cares about her sister, trying to look out for and even hearing Hinako out while also following the traditions of the era she was born into. She doesn't think that she can go against the traditional roles, as she told Hinako in their conversation, but all in all, she seems like a good sister. For as much as she shows up and the role she plays to Hinako in the story, I thought she was going to be the final boss of the last playthrough, and I honestly think she should have been. It would have just made so much sense. The only thing I never really figured out is the bell. I know it symbolizes good fortune, but it always rings when she's around, other than the final time. Because of a risk he took on a restaurant, he starts taking his anger out on his family. Hinako's father is not a good man, but as a character, he plays his role perfectly and sort of fits my vision of what I think a father in this era would be like. Him coming full circle and apologizing to Hinako is a good moment for his character. Saving it for the final flashback was great and really caught me by surprise. Does that mean I agree with his methods of parenting? No, and I think he doesn't deserve forgiveness for any of the things he's done to his family, but I do think think his apology works because it shows a very realistic scene. Hinako's mother loves her family, even the members who don't treat her with respect. She never stands up to her husband in front of her daughters and takes the most of his abuse, trying to shield them from it. But behind closed doors, she stands up for herself, never letting her children see that side of her. On one end, I can see why Hinako doesn't like her, because from what she sees, she doesn't ever want to end up in the kind of life she sees her mother live. But on the other hand, she does worry about her daughters and tries to set a good example for them. The era in which the example is being set works against her attempts, but she does try to support her family. Sakuko is a bit of a strange girl from the moment we meet her. She seems cheery and upbeat, but her coping mechanism of cutting off rabbits' limbs is just disturbing. We learn through her journals that she's a shrine maiden. Spirits and other apparitions come and talk to her, but people don't believe her, making her look crazy. I can see why this would make her strange, because she doesn't have anyone who understands her. So when she made her first real friend, she didn't really know how to act, leading her to demand promises that weren't realistic. But that's also just what young kids do, and being one of the least important characters in the game, that's all she really is. Confident, non-judgmental, and supportive. At first glance, Shu seems like a stand-up guy, and seeing that he has a crush on Hinako early on shows that he cares for her as more than just a best friend. But not being able to confess his feelings to her leads him to becoming one of the biggest contributors to Hinako's eventual downfall, prescribing her medicine that should be helping her while knowing it has adverse side effects, all in the hopes that she chooses not to get married. At his age, I can understand being afraid to confess to someone you like. We've all been there before. But the way he goes about it is completely wrong and just makes him seem weak. Rinko is your average teenage girl going through an unrequited love, but this girl is yandere. She constantly tries to take Shu's attention away from Hinako, tries to convince Shu to get over her, and when all else fails, she tries to get Hinako out of the way herself. You quickly see exactly what kind of woman she is. Obsessive, manipulative, and selfish. Being upset because the person you like looks at someone else is understandable, but it's hard to sympathize with her when you see the things she does. She's annoying in a perfect way that benefits her role as a character, and every time she's on screen, you can't wait for her to leave. Kotoyuki is a mysterious man who is a very important piece to the game. Falling in love with Hinako from the moment they met and the way that they met, you would never guess that he's the heir to a famous clan. His story is a little sad, but at the same time, he seems selfish for not wanting to understand Hinako's feelings and instead trying to weaponize his own towards her, saying things like he thought he showed Hinako that he cared for and understood her when she was having second thoughts at the wedding. He's a good man, but he needs time to evaluate who he is, treating Hinako like a prize to be won more than the woman he claims to be in love with. His character does a great job of showing how a man is powerful enough to change a woman's entire personality, trying to craft Hinako into what he believes is the perfect woman. Though, there is a side of him that understands he should be more willing to understand Hinako. Most of the enemies represent something or someone in Hinako's life. I mentioned at the start that the most common enemy we face are the doll-like figures that look like women known as kashimashi. I think they represent the everyday woman. Their name comes from a Japanese word meaning noisy, derived from a proverb that roughly translates to, when three women gather, it becomes noisy. These enemies represent the societal expectations of women and the constant chatter Hinako hears from other women in Ebisugaoka, be it kids at school or adults around town. The Ayakakashi, or scarecrows, resemble Shu, Rinko, and Sakuko, even standing in for them at times. I guess they're supposed to be how the three of them look to Hinako after she's killed them. They kind of just stand there staring at and judging her, though I could be wrong about that. The first mini-boss, Ara Abare, is a huge creature made of flesh, but the most important thing about it is written in Hinako's journal. She writes that it howls horribly while swinging a large knife, its anger making it worse than a wild animal. This is supposed to represent her dad, screaming and swinging the knife he threw at her. Later, we fight another representation of him called the Drum Master. She writes that it beats a drum to instill fear and control those bound to it, trying to drown out noise with its own even louder noise, because that's how it's always been, showing how intimidated she was by him. The Corruptor is a monster made up of multiple faces. In her journal, Hinako says that she doesn't recognize any of them, but they all recognize her. Wherever it goes, it spouts repulsive things, violating the peace and quiet around it. I think this monster is supposed to represent more residents of Ebisugaoka, along with the gossip and rumors they spread all directed at Hinako for being different. But personally, the most disturbing monster is the Hatcher, a creature covered in pregnant stomachs that endlessly gives birth to enemies. When writing about it, Hinako says she would rather die than become something like this. Now the Hatcher represents Junko. When writing about Junko, there's a section where Hinako talks about visiting her in the hospital when she was pregnant. All she could do was groan and vomit while looking unrecognizable. Hinako says it felt like the sister she adored had completely disappeared. When Hinako writes about the Hatcher, she's also writing about her fears surrounding Junko's pregnancy and how she doesn't want to turn out that way. This is also probably why we never see Junko's face, because Hino can't even remember what the sister she adored looked like before seeing her in the hospital. Or it can even be because when she got married, she underwent her own rituals, and that's just how Hinako sees her. That's why her mask is different from the foxes we see throughout the game. There are other monsters throughout the game, but these stand out as the most important to understanding Hinako's character and the trauma they put on her. To end things, I just want to say Silent Hill F is a beautiful game. The town of Ebisugaoka being empty, all while feeling cramped when surrounded by fog. The streets are unwelcoming, but you want to see what's around the next corner. The rice field covered in fog, making you anxious that something can jump out at you at any second. The school being the most creepy place in the game fills you with unease and shows you why you should never step into a school if faced with a horror scenario. The mountains being surrounded by trees makes you feel trapped while out in the open, and the Shimizu residence making us go through the fractures of Hinako's own mind. The floral blight is a great addition to the environments, showing something that looks pretty but distressing at the same time, also serving as a narrative element for Hinako's mental state. I personally liked being in Ebisugaoka over the Dark Shrine because the environments were more varied. The Dark Shrine is a good looking place, but it never really changed from the time you enter to the time you leave. The hallways and corridors all kind of blended together, but it's still a creepy place you wouldn't want to find yourself in. All the characters look great, very expressive in both movement and their faces. The actors and actresses did a great job of making every character come to life in their own ways. Silent Hill F is a game that stuck with me since the first time I rolled the credits, and is something I've thought about literally every day since. The story of Hinako Shimizu is tragic, and even though I don't personally relate to it, it's still a very relatable story. Being abused every day by your parents, constantly being pushed to be someone you're not, and finally being forced into a marriage would make anyone explode the way she did. Fighting our way through the streets of Ebisugaoka and the corridors of the Dark Shrine while going through Hinako's memories of fear and regret until we finally see her come to terms with herself was sad but great. All the characters, though realistically flawed, are very well written and fit their roles in the story perfectly, not only as factors in Hinako's life, but also the enemies she faces. The only thing I don't like is the whole QB prophecy, because I think the story works better without it, keeping it grounded and more relatable. Combat is easy to understand and gives you a few different ways to defeat the enemies, but always make sure you feel overwhelmed. And playing the game from start to finish multiple times can be annoying, but it's definitely worth it. The environments are eerie to move through, and the sound design keeps you anxious all the time. Hearing enemies in the distance and music that makes you feel like you're being followed constantly. And the floral blight, while grotesque, has a beauty to it. This beauty also serving as a narrative element in of itself. Silent Hill F was my first time playing the game in the series, and is my personal game of the year for 2025. Hinako Shimizu is now one of my favorite characters in fiction, and the story of her unfortunate downfall will stay with me for a long time. I just want to say thank you for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This is my longest video to date. I restarted the script from scratch about 6 different times, recorded everything multiple times, and re-edited a lot. There was a day when I thought I was done, then I came home the next day and didn't like any of it. I started working on this way back in September, and I thought I would be done in a few weeks, and yeah, I was definitely underestimating everything. There were a few things I could have done differently. For one, I could have talked about the bosses a little more, like the attacks they use and how their actual battles go, and maybe just be a little more confident on the mic. But it's just learning for next time. While doing this, I also learned new ways to edit videos, like new ways I can use keyframes and things like crop softness to make things look better. Or look better to me anyway. But seriously, thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I really appreciate you listening to me talk about this game for an hour. My name's Vaughn, Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.